3 simple steps to sell anything. My name is Robert Poole. Today we're going to talk about the the third step in the process of the HSC model. If you've missed the other videos, it'll make a lot more sense and you get a lot more out of this video if you go back and watch those first. So I highly recommend that, although you'll still get something out of this regardless. So this video is about what I call the close part. And somebody, some people say it's, they say offer. But I like to use the word close because it kind of reminds me that we're there to actually help somebody make a decision, and we do have to give them a little push. We've got to give them a reason to act now. If we, throw out just, hey, you wouldn't want anything, you wouldn't want to buy anything, would you? Then, which is what a lot of salespeople do because they're very unconfident in this stage, and we'll talk about why that is. Then, we kind of, it can be a cop-out, so to speak. So that's why I like the word close, but you can call this anything you want. If you think about the first 2 steps, again, we talked about are about beliefs, about changing beliefs through marketing. And the sales process is about the marketing process, changing beliefs, and then getting somebody to act on those new beliefs. And so this is the portion that we're going to talk about how to get people to act on their new beliefs. And again, if we haven't done the first 2 parts of it, we haven't done the marketing part in the sales process, then the sales part, which is what this is, trying to get somebody to act, that's where salespeople really get themselves into trouble. That's where it gets painful for both the prospect and the salesperson. It's the reason a lot of salespeople, even though they're in that profession, still hate to sell. And let's face it, a lot of prospects, normal people like you and me, hate to be sold to because it's being done wrong. So we're going to show you how to do that. So you got to make sure you do this first part right. But let's say you've gotten to that, and let's talk about that. As a editorial note, this is literally just a couple days ago. My wife and I were in a sales situation for a high-ticket item, and the salesperson did exactly the wrong thing. They did a poor job of the first part of changing beliefs, and then they started to get to the close, and they started doing all these hard closes, and they did it wrong too. And we did end up buying, and it's just because we really wanted the product that was being presented. But we bought in spite of the salesperson, and that's not the kind of sale we want because, we literally, I know I personally walked away from the sale feeling almost dirty, kind of like, ugh, just wanted it over with and taken advantage of. And I think we've all felt that, compared to when we walk out of there and we felt like we, made a new friend with the salesperson. So we're going to talk about how that is affected in the close too. So, as human beings, we tend to procrastinate. We tend to put off decisions, and there's legitimate reasons for that. It's if you think about Newton's first law of motion, an object stays in motion unless it's acted upon by an equal or an outside force, a greater outside force, or however it actually goes. But you know what I mean. There's a reason that we'll drive the same way to work every day. People will sit in the same section at church every week. And it's because we're bombarded with thousands of decisions each day. And the more we can kind of put decisions on autopilot or, let's face it, procrastinate and not make any decision, the easier it is on our lives. And our brains kind of have to do that. So, it's a natural tendency, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It helps us survive. But in a sales situation, sometimes, even though somebody is excited, we've done a good job of marketing to them, they're excited about, wow, this new potential of this solution that's going to change their lives, but they've got just that little bit of procrastination, they're a little bit unsure. And so the whole goal of the close phase is to give them a reason to act right now, to help them over that hump of procrastination, indecisiveness that we all have, even if we want something. If we go through, again, those first 2 steps, sometimes if we do a great job on that, sometimes people will handle this step for us, but not always. So and we'll talk about, how we kind of identify that. But there's really the 3 main motivations that I've come up with that I think are probably the biggest ones that help people move beyond that indecisive feeling where you get them and you can tell that, they're interested, they're, potentially ready to buy, but they're just on the fence. So how do we do that? So what I like to use is what I call the USF model. We'll go through each of these. So the first one, U, stands for urgency. Urgency, if I'm spelling it right. And urgency is simply giving somebody a reason to act now because, there's some kind of, it's time sensitive in some way, the offer. Meaning, if they act right now, they're going to get a substantial discount. If they put it off, if they procrastinate, they kind of get penalized because they have to pay more for the product or service, or, it's going to change, or it's not going to be available, or something. Some reason that gives them, that little oomph and that justification to, well, I better buy now because, and so it can be, any kind of reason that you can come up with, and it has to be a legitimate reason. This other day I was mentioning about this sales situation we're in. The salesperson tried to use urgency, except for what they came up with we knew it was a totally bogus, reason for an urgency reason. It was the, you got to do this right now, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus by telling you specifically what it was, but it was, you got to do this right now because of X reason. And we knew X reason, was complete BS. It was obvious, that wasn't the case. So when you're using any of these things, they got to be legitimate. But for any product or service, for anything you do, you can come up with something. I guarantee it may not be completely obvious, but you can come up with something, some reason that they've got to act right now because, something's going to change in the product or service based upon time, as I said, discount, that sort of thing. The second one is scarcity. So in addition to, them having some sort of time-sensitive reason to do something now, scarcity is one of those human things that we can't stand it. It's the, when somebody else has something and, we want it, or, there's a limited number of, X number of products available that we all want. And so what does that do? That increases the value that makes you want it even more because we can't have it, or we're afraid, that there's only a few of them left, so to speak. So we got to do it now. It's the, hey, there's a reason they do the, what do they call it? Like, this is the collector's version. There's only going to be 100 of them made, or whatever. That's what that is. That's what scarcity is, and it's a way of, creating the scarcity that as humans we can't stand that. If we want something and there's a limited number of them, and we're competing with other humans, it's like that just ratchets up the value big time, and that makes it so that we just really want that, even though the intrinsic value of the product before that we knew that may not have been that. But if we can show somebody that, hey, there's a limited amount of this, we can only take on so many clients, there's a production line that there's only going to be a certain amount of these products made over this period of time, or this is a limited thing. This particular version of the product is not going to be made again. And it may take some time to figure this out. But if you brainstorm and you come up with stuff over time, you'll be able to figure it out. And it's so powerful to be able to use that. We really want to take advantage of this psychology with this. And again, any of these things, it's not like we're trying to trick people. What we're trying to do is help them. We've already talked to them about their beliefs and change their beliefs, and hopefully change their identity, which we'll talk about in another episode. But if we've already done that, and we know that this is a good fit for them, we know this is going to enhance their lives, then why wouldn't we help them, to get over that procrastination, get over that indecisiveness? And so these are legitimate ways. But again, if we try to use these when it's not appropriate, when we shouldn't be selling it to that person, or we're trying to strong arm somebody because their beliefs haven't been changed, that's where sales gets a bad rap. Again, we've all been in this position. So we want to make sure we're using all these properly. So if we've got urgency, it's time sensitivity, we've got, some kind of limited amount, somehow that getting that concept across. And then, of course, what's the last one? Fear of loss. And fear of loss is simply, this is going away, meaning the opportunity to buy this product or service is somehow going away because, again, we're not making any more of these. It's the sale ends, next week, and you're not going to be able to get this anymore. We're not going to be offering this service, in a month, we're going to stop offering this service, and if you don't act now, you're going to miss out on this, and this kind of goes into the other two, the scarcity, for instance, if there's, it kind of combines, because if something, is scarce and there's only 100 of them, then you also have that fear of loss that, geez, if I'm not one of those 100 people, then I'm going to lose out on this. So this is where we have to really emphasize what they're going to lose by if they don't make a decision right now. So we want to help them again make that decision so that that they're getting the value that we know that they want and that is good for them. But we have to use all three of these, and one of them may be sufficient, but when you start stacking them on top, they make it a huge difference. And so if you use there's other ways you can do this, but these are the big three that, and 90% of the time this is plenty enough to make somebody take advantage of it and to say, you know what, I better do this now. And the cool thing about this is that this fixes a lot of things, because what's one of the problems that in sales, it's buyer's remorse. And you may have a product or a service that there isn't a refund, so to speak, of once they do the sale or whatever, it's a done deal type of thing. They can't get their money back, which is fine. But they're also, let's face it, if you want customers who are turning into raving fans, you want people who are happy after even if they can't get their money back. You don't want a bunch of people running around in the marketplace who hate your guts and think they got screwed by your company. So you really want, and this helps do that, because buyer's remorse is all about the person goes through that transition that we've talked about, goes through changing the beliefs and changing that identity, and we've finally gotten them over that hump of procrastination and indecisiveness. And then, all of a sudden, they're presented with, the post-sale. They've got that high from the sale. They're doing great. They're like, wow, I really enjoyed this. I'm excited about this new product or service. They're on that chemical high that I've talked about in other videos. But those things eventually wear off. They'll go home. They're out of the sales situation. They'll talk to their spouse. They'll talk to their friends, and then they start getting questions because their spouse wasn't there, when they made this decision. Their spouse didn't get those chemical highs. Their spouse didn't go through the whole sales process. Their friends didn't go through the sales process. So all of a sudden their spouse is asking them, well, why did you do that? Or their friends are asking them, well, geez, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Or even in their own mind, they're like, oh, geez, what did I do? And it's all because they've come down from that chemical high, that physical high that we actually feel. And what this does is, by using these things, these are actually logical justifications. And if they can say in their own mind, well, I had to do it because, I would have lost out on the discount, because it ends Friday, then the sale is over, or, they were only making 100 of them, honey, or so I had to do something now. And it just makes sense. And so they're justifications in their own mind that they can explain to others. So they can justify it to themselves and justify it to others. And that totally wipes out buyer's remorse, which is a big problem in sales. And again, it's not just a refund problem. It's a problem because then you have, even if somebody's stuck with your product or service, they're running around in the marketplace disgruntled and not happy. So, and the other part of this is the USF model also enhances that because it doesn't leave buyer's remorse. It actually creates a situation where somebody is actually justifying this to themselves, and they're going out and they're telling other people about it because it's become their new identity, and it's because they've justified it to themselves. It's a lot easier for them to go out and say, yeah, hey, look at me, I did this, it's a good thing, and for all these reasons, So you kind of get an instant referral base right there too. So, so how do we do this again? If we look at my eraser here, if we use these, you can use it online. So, if you have a web page or whatever, obviously you want to have the emotional stuff, the belief building and all that near the top. But then, for somebody who's just going to buy right there is not going to wait for, the logical reasons. But then, at the bottom, so sort of, as I say, below the fold, meaning at the bottom of a web page, bottom part of it, that's where you're going to list all those logical reasons. So that person can go through that and go, oh yeah, that's what they needed, So that's where you can do the close, gives those person those logical reasons, and sort of in person and I would say over the phone are very similar. And, there are situations where, you can give somebody, like I said, a reason to act right now. And, when they're asking those buying questions, they're asking questions like, what would be a good one? They're saying, well, so how soon could you guys get this solution delivered? I mean, that's a buying question, So you kind of know they're ripe to have that USF model put in there. So you have to kind of listen for questions they might ask because you're confirming, again, that the beliefs have been changed, that they're ready for the close. If you don't hear that, and if that's not the impression you're getting from, you know that you got to go back and work on the first two steps. But this last step is actually very easy. It's that everybody gets wound up about, closing, and sales people are scared to death of it. And it's because they, number one, didn't do the belief shifting and the identity first with the first two steps of HSC. And then, the last part is they didn't do this closing part correctly. But, it's so easy to actually get it scripted in your mind because you come up with these reasons and it turns this whole sales process into a pleasurable event for you as the salesperson doing the selling, as well as the prospect. And so it's a win-win for everybody. So, overall, this whole HSC process is meant to give you, although we've done several videos on this, it's actually extremely simple. I didn't say it was easy because you do have to practice with it and try different things depending on your situation, how you're delivering the content online, in person, on the phone, whatever. But it is simple. And if you use these three steps, a lot of times, like I said, the first two steps done well, you can even skip the last step because people will close themselves, so to speak. So, go out, work on this, try to come up with those hooks, try to come up with that story, and start experimenting with it. Start using, the USF model. And you will not believe what a difference it makes in your sales. Because when we started doing this in our company, it made a huge sales. So I hope you enjoyed this today. If you got a lot out of this, please, rate the show, give us your comments, subscribe on YouTube and, like button, all that good stuff. And I will talk to you in the next video.